Hello everyone, my name is Mikhail Mamonov and I'm an assistant professor of finance at the Toulouse Business School. And today I'm going to talk about my research agenda, which is mostly focused on political distortions in finance. And specifically, I want to introduce our recent research project that we have conducted with my co-authors Mario Carillo from University of Pompeu Fabra, Raoul Minetti from Michigan State University, and Pierluigi Murro from Luis Guido Carli University. So the starting point of our research is that, unfortunately, over the last decades, the world has been witnessing the rise of political extremism in different parts of the world: Russia, Venezuela, Turkey, and even the United States. So our research question in this project is the following: do authoritarian political regimes smooth or amplify financial crises? And in the literature, there are different proponents, different views in the literature. Some people think that government overall may try to smooth the fluctuations of the business cycle and financial cycles overall, and this roots back to Gershon Krohn social view on the government back in the 1960s. But more recent research has shown that actually authoritarian regimes, they may fail in managing broader economic crises. So we addressed our research question by exploiting the case of the Italian Fascist regime during the 1920s and the 1930s. So in particular, we study how fascist leaders faced the Great Depression in the 1930s with a focus on how they intervened into the banking sector. And in our research, we combined two different data sets. The first one comes from the Bank of Italy. Recently, the Bank of Italy released fantastic data sets on the balance sheets of literally 2,600 Italian banks operating between 1892 to 1973. This is a very much detailed data on the asset structure and liability structure of those banks, with a particular identifier of those banks to specific provinces across Italy. The second data set comes from Cifelli book, which we digitized for our research. And this data set actually provides us with a detailed personal level data about prefects that were governing different provinces in Italy back in those times, in the 1920s and the 1930s. And specifically, we have what we now would call their CVs, so we can track their career paths, their position in the fascist party, in the hierarchy, like lower position, upper position, high position, their education, and their previous experience in governing provinces. Just a few important stylized facts about fascist prefects, the prefects appointed by the fascist party. So first of all, they were local agents of the state with considerable authority and influence over local administration and institutions. So clearly they could intervene into banks, and we have lots of anecdotal evidence on how they did so. Appointing new fascist prefects was instrumental to organize the dictatorship in the country back in the days and exercise control over the periphery. And most importantly, that not all prefects were immediately replaced by fascist regime due to clearly the lack of administrative experience of the new prefects, and this generated differential replacement lags, meaning that we have lots of spatial variation in the appointments of fascist prefects across Italy, and we exploit this variation. So some provinces, they were led by fascist prefects, some provinces, they were led by neutral prefects. And we want to understand how bank credit behave in those provinces that were led by fascist prefects compared to those provinces that were led by neutral prefects. And especially what happened on the border between the 1929, or before Italy went into a recession, the Great Depression, and after. We have three major empirical findings. The first one is that before Italy fell into the Great Depression during 1921 to 1928, a 1 standard deviation rise in the pre-crisis magnitudes of the fascist prefect intensity in a given province was associated with actually an increase, a 1.3 percentage points increase in the annual credit growth rates. However, when the crisis hit, actually the same provinces, they experienced a huge decline in credit compared to those provinces that were led with neutral prefects. Specifically, one standard deviation rise in the fasci prefect intensity during the crisis time was associated with a 3 percentage points additional decline in credit. So overall, our results mean that political extremism actually amplifies the fluctuations of the credit cycle. The second empirical finding is that fasci prefects, they amplify not only the credit dynamics itself, but they also lead to amplification of the non-performing loans, meaning that before the crisis in the fasci-led provinces, the non-performing loans, they were lower than in those provinces that were led by neutral prefects. However, during the crisis times, our analysis shows that there is a huge spike in the non-performing loans. And the final thing is that why we do care about dynamics of credit and non-performing loans, because firms, they are taking those loans. Okay, we don't have an access to the firm balance sheets and we cannot say anything about investment, employment and so on. But what we observe is that actually during crisis in fasci-led provinces, the intensity of bank failures also increased. So overall, what we obtain in our analysis is that during crisis times, during these deep economic crisis times in fasci-led provinces, credit cycle was amplified, meaning that the credit declined much harsher than in non-fasci-led provinces. Non-performing loans spiked much higher, and bank failures were intensified substantially. Our results survived through a battery of robustness checks, and one of the most important is that we address the so-called reverse causality concern. Sometimes people say that maybe those provinces that witnessed more intensive credit dynamics before the Great Depression, these were those provinces where Fasci party was first of all trying to appoint its prefects. So to address this concern, we appeal to a recent paper by Acemoglu and co-authors published at Quarterly Journal of Economics, and we instrument the appointment of Fasci prefects in Italy with the battlefield deaths during the World War I, which is clearly exogenous to the credit dynamics in the 1920s and the 1930s. And our results survive. So to conclude, we observe that political extremism amplifies credit cycle and in a sense is detrimental for financial stability.